Happy Wednesday, world out there. It is the Seahawks FanTable podcast back for year 3. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Fantastic. How are you, Sam?
It's this off-season, man. I mean, off-season drama. What about you guys? How you guys doing?
I'm doing awesome.
All
It's a
right.
nice spring day. The stress hasn't hit yet.
All right. If you were hearing our pre-live banter, Ross has done a complete 180, so watch out for it. Watch out.
Were we live just then?
We weren't live, but
I'm just resigned to it.
oh, okay. He's got a different outlook right now. This is interesting. But yeah, guys, this is year 3 of our FanTable podcast. So thank you for being a part of us, and for the people that have been listening, thank you for joining us as well. This is always exciting because it's Seahawks football. We're doing our off-season podcast. We've got the draft coming up next week, so we have the pre-draft coming up. Maddie Finn Brown is going to be joining us, and he's going to be here next week and after the draft. So we might have more than one pick, so that'll be exciting. I'm looking forward to that next week.
Is Maddie going middle name now? 3 names? Is he going Ryan Adam Davis on us?
No, he's not going P-Hawk with the 3 names. I just remember that's the one way to help me distinguish who he is versus other people that I might mistake. So
Okay.
just throwing it out there.
Well, I like it. It's
Yeah.
classy.
We should force it on him and just use it.
We'll actually just introduce him as Finn next week, and people will be really confused.
FN2187?
Exactly. But yeah, guys, it's the off season. We're almost at the end of the off season. Voluntary camp started, so that's a big topic because we got people not showing up for voluntary camp, which is always a big to do. You guys have any thoughts about that? Like, Earl Thomas is not at voluntary camp. He's got a year left on his contract. He wants an extension. He's kind of alluded to wanting to go to Dallas. What's your hot take on that?
I mean, he's not going to be on the team come September, so I don't think they want him there right now, right? You don't want to get him hurt, then you got to pay everything. So, yeah, he's not going to be on the team. So you can't really have him show up and not take away reps from everybody else and who's out there to learn it during this voluntary time. And yeah, I mean, it's time to get used to not having Earl there, I suppose.
What choose that?
Well, I mean, I guess Ross solved it.
That's it. That's the show, you guys. Thanks for listening.
All right.
I don't. Is that? I mean, how are we 100% sure that he's not going to be here? I mean,
It
I
doesn't
feel like
make a lot of sense to have him there at this point, really.
I think that's the yellow brick road. Everyone's saying like there's no benefit into him coming to voluntary camp unless he is 100% in on the Seahawks and playing out his last year on a 1-year deal or 1 year left on his deal. The player advocate would say, don't go to voluntary camp, wait to see what happens in the draft, and then once the draft happens, that's when you start reporting because it's mandatory. He's not likely to sit out because that impacts his earning potential. So that's kind of the path that I think he's on, which is kind of what Ross laid out, which I agree with.
well, I don't know whether he's going to be here or not. I'm not willing to definitively say one way or the other. I do know that who is or isn't at volunteer minicamp ultimately pretty much usually means nothing in the long run, right? I mean, it's just volunteer minicamp.
Right, it depends on how they're using it. I mean, we've had players in the past sort of use it as leverage, and if you're using it purely as leverage, it isn't no leverage, right? Players, like, every year we go through this with some player, at least on some team, right, where they think if they don't show up, they have leverage, and, like, that's just not how it happens. You've got no leverage as a player, but I don't think Earl's thing is purely about leverage this time, right? It's more about the situation with the team and where is he going to be, and I mean, for all we know, really, the team has told him, like, don't come in because you could get hurt, and we don't know. I mean, they're pretty straightforward with people, right? Like last year with Richard Sherman, they told Richard Sherman, like, we may trade you. They told him. So I'm sure, like, they've told Earl Thomas, you know what, we're talking, and so why don't you just hang off and do your thing? We trust you to be in good shape if you're with us eventually anyway, because you're a professional. But for the moment, just chill, baby.
Okay, that's fair.
That's
I mean,
fair.
I guess it's so depressing to think about, but it's just it's the sad point of where we're at, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't really like it. The thing is, if he wants 13 million a year, you can't give him 13 million a year now. I mean, like for the next 4 years, where he's at it as age wise and where he's at health wise. I mean, that would just be dumb. You can't give him the extension. You can't give him the money he would thinks he's worth, and he is sort of worth it if you paid him for like last season and for like right now. But the thing is, it's not going to be a 1-year contract. It's a 4-year thing or a 3-year thing, and you can't pay him 13 million at his age. You can't. We just got burned by Cam Chancellor on that.
Yeah, but I think the injuries to Cam, comparative, and also even to Cliff Averill, it's not the same. But I get what you're saying. It's almost like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But I don't think this is... It's not anything that anyone could have anticipated. Of all the injuries that would have put Cliff Averill or Cam Chancellor out for their careers, I don't think neck stingers were the injuries that anyone would have highlighted, right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like, it depends on what you say. It's not foreseeable. Like, yes, you wouldn't foresee that in that game he's going to get a neck stinger and it's going to be a thing that takes him out forever. I don't think when people say it was foreseeable, that's what they mean, though. What they mean is...
Just the injury in general.
Yeah, I mean, like, Cam Chancellor had played relatively few seasons where he played every single game up to that point, and he has a certain style of playing. And so, yeah, you can't say like with any one certainty that this play or that game or that type of injury is going to happen. But you could have easily looked and said, you know what? I bet around this time he's going to have a pretty major injury. And in fact, he did. Again, like I'm not saying like I knew he was going to have a career-ending thing, but I thought, we talked about this last year. Do you want to pay Cam Chancellor that much if you're going to have him only around like 8 games a season or 6 games a season or 10 games a season? Is it still worth it? And now we have to decide whether it was worth it. I mean, they took the risk, and you can't do anything about it now. But is Earl at 33 and 34 going to play the same level he played when he was 29? Do you really think so? Do safeties stay at this? If some safeties play till they're 40, 39, 38, they can. But do they play the same elite number one safety in the league kind of level worth 13 million at that level? I mean, we have to take all sentimentality out, I guess. And I don't think
if we're talking 4 years with Earl, which again I'm not disagreeing with you, but we are talking about 29, 30, 31, 32. You know what I mean? It's not up to 34. He's not 34, 35. It's not that old yet. So
it's 33. It's 30. I mean, like
in 4 years. In 4 years, it's 33.
He'll be 29 this season.
Right.
So
the 4th year he'd be 33. 29, 30, well, 32, but
yeah.
I mean, I don't see a lot of safeties who stay at the I mean, how many safeties stay at the prime of their career for 12 years?
No, very few, and it is a gamble if you do something.
And he again, he's already shown the tendency. I mean, how many of the past 3 seasons, how many has Earl played completely healthy? 0.
None. He's been hurt every year, so
exactly.
Likely to continue.
Right. So what's the conversation, to be honest? Except for like we love Earl. I mean, I love Earl. He's my guy. I've got his jersey. It's on my wall.
I think the conversation is that if you choose to go a different direction, how much of a step down is that for you immediately, or in the next couple of seasons? Like obviously this ties in real well with our first topic, but I think that not having Earl changes this from retooling to rebuilding. Just him specifically, in my opinion.
Right. I get it. I mean, I do agree 100%. People keep saying, for example, like the defense going forward can be built around Wagner, but I disagree. Like with the Seahawks style, you don't build on your middle linebacker. He's the vacuum cleaner. You build around your free safety that lets everybody else do their job. But that said, if your free safety is demanding $13 million a year and isn't really anyway anymore, and is telling other coaches come get me, which I don't think that particularly went over very well with the front office.
Right. It'll be
interesting. He can't pretend anymore he's all in when he's actually even thought to say that.
Yeah. But I mean,
he can backtrack later and say, look, of course I want to be a Seahawk, and that just means like, hey, if Seattle has to let me go, that's what I want them to do. True. But that's something you say behind closed doors. That's something you tell your agent to do. That's not something you do You don't embarrass your team. I mean,
Yeah, but I
That's
also
what
don't
Earl
think
does,
you.
though.
Yeah, but I also don't think that you see a lot of times that the cameras go that deep into the locker room. Like I can't remember the last time I've seen a player go to the front door of an opponent's locker room in a camera like that. So
yeah,
you know,
I
so
can't
you
remember the last time I saw a player ever heard of a player walking up to another coach and saying, "Hey, come get me."
right, and the thing that's weird is like you wouldn't have that wouldn't have happened on like on the field when all the coaches are there together, when all the players are there together. It's weird that it happened in the tunnel, and there happened to be a camera there. So it is odd. I definitely agree with
that
you
he was
though.
heading to the other team's locker room, which is why the cameraman was like, there. Because I bet the cameraman at first thought it was like going to be like the opposite thing. Like Earl Thomas going to the Cowboy locker room. Ooh, he's going to whip some ass. No.
Yeah, maybe that's what they're
friends
anticipating. That's where they're rolling. But it was definitely a weird situation. But
Yeah.
we are the Seahawks FanTable podcast. I'm Sam. With me, as always, is Ross and Zeb. Gentlemen, we've got topic number 1, so we're going to go straight into it. So, topic number 1: are the Seahawks rebuilding or retooling? And is this how you expected the offseason to go? I didn't tell who was going to go first, so Zeb, I'm going to hit you off with this because you said you were not prepared at all. So, go.
Well, I think we kind of just answered it for me. If we go into the season with Earl, it was a retooling. If we go into the season without Earl, we're officially rebuilding. That's how that to me, that's like he would be the one piece on defense that we could keep, and things wouldn't feel completely different. But without him there, we got a whole new back end. That to me, outside of Russell Wilson, he's the guy that you have to keep for it to be the same team. So I obviously it remains to be seen exactly what's going to happen. But if we move forward without Earl Thomas, then we're in official rebuilding mode, in my opinion. And is that how I thought the offseason was going to go? No. I did expect some changes, but so far they've been bigger and more than I expected. So things have gone slightly different than I thought they would.
What are some of the changes what surprised you the most so far?
Cutting. Well, I think cutting Sherman surprised me. I thought he might be the one that would stay out of the LOB. So that was a little bit surprising to me. And then I don't know. I really thought that as long as we had guys that are considered some of the best in the league at their position, we would try to hold on to those guys. And I understand money is a huge issue. But, in hindsight, with like Michael Bennett, for example, in particular, it's become pretty apparent they just wanted him out of here. So it makes sense in hindsight. But those are a couple of moves that I didn't necessarily expect to see this offseason. All the coaching changes, I full on expected that. In fact, I expected it a couple seasons ago. So it's a little refreshing to actually see those.
Yeah.
Right.
Ross, what about you? You buy into the branding of rebuilding versus retooling?
I mean, I don't really distinguish between the two, really. I mean, that's just, if you say you're rebuilding, people don't show up at the stadium. If you say you're retooling, they do. I guess. I don't know. I mean, like it's both. It's rebuilding, it's retooling. Like they say, if you've got your quarterback in the NFL, you're kind of always in contention. So that's why the justification, you could say you're retooling. And it looks like they're pretty intent on keeping a couple of people around, Wagner and so on. But, I mean, when you change all of your coordinators and a lot of your position coaches, you know that they're going to want some of their own guys anyway. So you don't really have to fool yourself. In my opinion, if you know you're going to change, or I guess I'm a little bit opposite than Zeb. Like some of the players, I did kind of feel like they would be gone, and I wanted the coaches. We talked about this in our last podcast. I wanted some of the coordinators or all the coordinators necessarily to be gone. I think I railed about it almost every week last season.
Almost.
Yeah, I mean, not getting, looking at it on paper and what are we getting out of it? We're not getting the most out of our players anymore. So, I guess I didn't expect it to actually happen though. I think Pete Carroll has a lot of loyalty. If he has a fault, sometimes that's it. But once they've changed all the coaches, I was like, okay, it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster. And hopefully they're kind of able to do like when they first came in, and they're really able to get some stuff done, even with some really, really young players, and really look under some rocks and find some talent here, so we're really competitive. But I mean, we're rebuilding. We are. I mean, the numbers tell you that, right? We're gonna have 1 out of 4 defensive linemen back, 1 or 2 of the 3 linebackers, and 1 or maybe 2 of the LOB. And then on offense, we're gonna have a new starting tight end. 1 of the 2 wide receivers is gonna be different. If we have a fullback, it'll be somebody new, and the running back will be somebody who only was playing part-time last year, and 3 of 5 offensive linemen will be different. So, who are we kidding? We're rebuilding. That isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, it's the modern NFL. You can get competitive real fast. Find a couple gems. Some of those safeties that didn't play last year, maybe they're really, really good. And we don't know because they didn't get to play.
Yeah.
And maybe another year of training camp and so on makes a big jump for some of the cornerbacks we've already got around. Who knows? I mean, even Jeremy Lane could end up back with us once he gets realistic about how much money he's worth.
Right.
So,
right.
I'm not. I guess to use some of the political terms, I think I consider retooling sort of like the PC way of saying rebuilding. But I'll say we're rebuilding, but I don't consider it as much of a downer as some people. I think. I think it'll be fun. We're not gonna have 13 wins probably this coming season, but I think it'll be a fun season anyway.
I think your exact words were, "We're gonna suck for the next 2 years."
We are. We are. We are gonna suck. We are. We're not. And if you go into the next season like hoping for the Super Bowl, well, I mean, we all hope for it. If you're going expecting it, that's your expectations. That's going to be a really, really hard season because we are going to suck. But if you look for the right things, like, do you remember how exciting 2011 was? We weren't at the Super Bowl level yet. 2010, like those were exciting times. Almost as exciting as like the second year of going to the Super Bowl, where you've done it before and you're just kind of staying on top. That sort of like get all the hungry young players again and see who's worth something and be surprised because wow, that guy is way outperforming what his draft place was or what his contract is. Those are exciting times. So yeah, we're gonna suck, but that doesn't mean it can't be fun.
Yeah, but also you got to think like we're coming off 4-12 and 5-11, and then 7-9 and 7-9. Like that's a huge improvement. I think we'll talk about this in a later topic, but the difference between rebranding and retooling is, like you said, it's semantics. It really doesn't mean anything. Now we're not blowing up anything. We're not starting from scratch. It's not like we're getting rid of franchise guys. And that's the thing. Like we have a core. Now our core is smaller than what I think we're accustomed to.
Our core is like 3 players, man.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, like, if you think about any prolonged team, it's so hard to keep the family together. And this is what we've always talked about. We've always concerned, like, okay, if we do this move, who are we going to lose? Because it's hard to keep all these players together on these big contracts. And like the NFL, not for long, injuries, jealousy, the things that Richard Sherman has said, and we haven't really gotten big into Richard Sherman, but I didn't expect him to get cut. I was really, really shocked by that just because I thought he was going to come back. I believe in him as an athlete. So this whole thing of rebranding, retooling, it's, potato, even though no one ever says potato.
I think you mean tomato.
Well, it's potato, tomato, but no one says tomato and no one says potato. It's potato.
Clamato.
Exactly.
People say tomato. I mean,
no one says tomato.
You live in the Pacific Northwest, man. Go hang out with some non-American where I have to, and you hear tomato all the time.
All right. Well,
let me get a tomato.
All right, you go hang out with your tomato friends. I'll hang out with my tomato friends.
My expat tomato groupie people.
All right. But what we're seeing right now is completely different from what we saw in the 2010 to 2011 years, and I think that's something that's really hard to think about because it's been such a long stretch. We're talking about a 6-year stretch where we had a huge core of people, and we don't have that anymore. We have Bobby Wagner, we have a KJ Wright, we have a Russell Wilson, we have a Doug Baldwin, we have up and coming guys like Shaq Griffin, Frank Clark, KJ's still a core guy. Tyler Lockett could potentially be a core guy. But it's not like this huge, long list of Pro Bowl guys that we're accustomed to seeing because of age, because of injury, because of salary. So I didn't expect this offseason to go the way it did. In hindsight, it's not a surprise because Seahawks really put themselves in a position that they really needed these guys to stay healthy. As Ross said, it was kind of a bad risk because Cam Chancellor, the style of his play, you don't expect him to get that injury, but you expect him to, he's going to miss games, and he's not always going to be available. I thought that was worth the risk, but I think we were all caught off guard by an injury that ultimately sounds pretty mundane and a stinger. Like, that doesn't sound like anything terrible, but it's potentially his career, and same thing with Clay Favreau.
Was it back-to-back that we lost Cliff Favreau and then Cam? My memory might be playing tricks. Was it back-to-back games?
I want to say it was like back-to-back games.
Right? I mean, like, that's just a weird thing, man. Like, one player's just out for his career 1 week, and then the next week another player. It's like, it doesn't usually happen like that.
Yeah. It's definitely a bad stretch, and I think that's the one thing that even though this offseason didn't go as I expected, I still think that even if we lose a lot of these players, and we have, I'm not as concerned about where the Seahawks are going to be, because we'll talk about it in topic number 2, but I like what they've done in this 2017 and 16 draft. They got guys that could be depth, but also they could step up. Guys that they drafted in the 3rd round could be potential starters in the secondary. They've got guys that I think have looked good. They got to stay healthy, they got to play, but I'm looking forward to that. From a personnel perspective, I think we have good depth, which is something that we lacked a lot last year, and they've done a good job of recovering that. But they also added a bunch of guys. They still retain guys like Bradley McDougald. They got, a big, beefy dude in DJ Fluker for the offensive line who has played with the offensive line coach. So there are guys that I think will fit well. So it's not as if we're like huge gaps, but we definitely have a lot to overcome if we want to be an NFC West favorite or a Super Bowl favorite. We're definitely on that cusp of a playoff team, and I think that's not a bad place to be.
Well, here's my question then. If we're full on rebuild mode, that means we're talking about 2 to 3 seasons before we're back up playing at a championship level if everything goes right. Goes right along with what happened when Pete first came in as the coach. And if you remember in 2010 when Pete came in, we'd had seasons of heartbreak, one after another, and then things fell apart, and we'd had, like you said, those couple of 4 and 5 win seasons or whatever they were.
God, that was
so.
awful.
When Pete comes in and he says, give me 2 or 3 seasons, and we'll be playing championship caliber football, I think the entire fan base, for the most part, was like, yes, we accept that. We will take that. Let's do it. Do you believe that the Seahawks fan base is going to give him that again? Will they let him have that much time to do this? Or because I don't see it. I think, even halfway through this season, if we're, 1, 2, 3 wins, this fan base is gonna get vocal and hostile, and I don't know that they're gonna have the patience this time around for that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a later topic, but I think that's something that all fan bases have, and I think Seattle specifically, it will turn really quickly. One bad season can really do a lot to erode that passion that I think a lot of us talk about a lot, and is actually genuine. But yeah, I mean, people have other things they could look to for entertainment. All right. Let's move along. So we're going to topic number 2 here. So Ross, this one is for you. What will have a greater impact to the team? The changes to the offensive or defensive coaching staff?
That's a good question. I believe it's going to be, by the nature of things, the offensive coaching staff. The defensive coaching staff, I mean, that's Pete Carroll's baby. So they have to kind of just like take what he says and kind of implement it and put it there. They're allowed to put their individual wrinkles in it, obviously, as we've seen with different coordinators with different different levels of success. But on the offense, I mean, we're going someplace kind of new, right? And it's the coordinator who has not had a huge amount of success, but maybe he's not always been in the right position to have great success. So it'll be interesting. Russell Wilson with the new offensive coordinator. I mean, like we always said, Darrell Bevel wasn't great at certain things, but But what I really liked about Daryl Bevell was able to, he put together a sound program or philosophy behind it. He didn't always implement it great, but if you had to tell any other coordinator to put together a top 10 offense on the budget he did, I don't think somebody could have done it. But I'm interested in seeing what somebody else would do with Russell Wilson. I mean, starting from scratch, what do you want to do with him? And some of the things that maybe Daryl Bevell got away from or was gun shy to do, maybe they'll use more of. Last year Russell Wilson ended up being a leading rusher, but even you knew they didn't want him to run as much because of that age and he's developing passer, things like that. But you know what? That is what makes him special. So let's maybe use that more. Or, I don't know. I just feel like I don't know what to expect from the offense next year. And I know what to expect from them. I know what they're going to try to do on defense right now. Right now, I could probably lay it out for you. I don't know what they're going to go for on offense. So I expect that's going to be a bigger change, right?
Yeah. Zeb, what about you?
Well, I don't know whether it's going to be because of the changes in coaching staff or not, but I have a bad feeling. So I'm going to be a pessimist for a second. That we are going to see a bigger change in the defense than we are in the offense, and not a positive change. So,
in their style of play or just their production?
Production.
Okay.
I expect the styles to change on offense more, but I don't expect, unless we really are able to improve the running game significantly, I don't expect the offense to be that much better than it has been. I'm not a guru by any means, but the people I talk to, Schottenheimer is kind of been an uninspiring hire, and it'll be interesting to see what he does with our guys, with Russell in particular. But again, it's going to come down to that running game, and if we can't run the ball consistently, then the offense, production-wise, is probably going to look similar to how it has, I would think. But defense, though, going in there with a lot of unknowns and new guys and trying to kind of figure out who's going to play where and that sort of thing, based on the level that we've become accustomed to seeing our defense play, it's not going to surprise me if it's severely lower this coming season.
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you guys. I think the offensive has a chance to have a greater impact because I expect it to be more catered towards Russell Wilson. I think it's going to be a greater dedication to having a run game, going play action, running the running game that they want to have, as opposed to this terrible lack of any kind of cohesion when it came to the running game at all. I mean, Ross, you last year, you were saying, I don't understand why everyone's so excited for Mike Davis. And you see a little bit of flavor in Mike Davis. Okay, well, I get why we're so desperate for running that we'll take whatever we can get. That's not what we should have next year. So I'm hoping these additions on the offensive line, maybe a guy that they draft, guys that are a little bit more seasoned, will just protect Russell Wilson better, and it won't be this all right, the offense is Russell Wilson scramble drill and go. That's not where we're going to be. We're not going to start, terribly slow again, where we'll actually be able to score points in the first quarter as opposed to the problems that we had last year. So that has the greatest impact. But to Zeb's point, the production that we get in the defense, it has a great chance to just fall off dramatically. The Seahawks weren't the best defense. They were probably a 10 to 15 defense in regards to just overall, because they were so up and down and also because of the injuries. So it's not like they had that much better that they could have really improved upon. I mean, we're talking about, maybe one score less per game on defense. But the fact that they are losing really, really key players, even guys that maybe didn't complete a season last year, it means that the person that you're standing next to is going to be totally new to you. If Earl Thomas is back, he's not going to have Cam Chancellor there. He's going to play with Bradley McDougall. They have some connection, but maybe the corners that are going to be playing, we don't know if Shaq's going to be on the right or left side. Is Shaq going to move over to Richard Sherman's spot? Is Shaq going to stay at the same spot? We know who the slot corner is. We don't know who's starting opposite, though. We don't know who is going to be the pass rusher other than Frank Clark. We hoping that our defensive big guys come back at the D tackle line, but no Sheldon Richardson. So there's so many questions. I feel myself, and I'm talking myself into what Zeb is saying, because there's so many unknowns. That production and the defense, it's probably going to have a greater impact negatively than what we'll be able to compensate for on the offensive side, which I think is scary to some degree, but I'm still hopeful, I guess I want to say.
I'm not. It's funny because I'm the one sort of down in next season. I'm not as scared about the defense as much because I think Pete Carroll's defense, when you have the star players, they can elevate it. But the base defense actually is fairly sound, I think.
So here's a question to you: when we went from the Jim Mora defense, or let's say from Matt Hasselbeck's last year in Seattle when they went 7-9 and beat the Saints in the playoffs, that wasn't a great defense. But that defense to the 2011 defense, also went 7-9 with Tavares Jackson. Do you think it's going to be kind of like, are we expecting that like dramatic rise, or is it going to be kind of like treading water?
I think the defense could be better than we're expecting. I mean, I don't want to say some of our players are products of the system, because they're not. It's that they fit perfectly in the system. So you can find, for example, I believe you can find another cornerback that can fit in and maybe not be a Richard Sherman, but be really, really, really good because of what our defense asks the cornerback to do. You don't have to be the best corner. You don't have to be the best cornerback of all time to look like one of the best cornerbacks of all time in the system. Again, that's not saying this like Richard Sherman's a system cornerback. He's not. But he has things he does really, really well, and he has things he doesn't do as well. And the beauty of Pete Carroll's system is like they never asked him to do those things he doesn't do as well to do them, right?
Right.
He doesn't have to, change directions so many times over the middle, because once a guy goes to the middle, that's not his anymore. Even though it looks like a man thing, basically he has to cover like fly patterns and outs and posts.
Right. I mean, he shut down an Aaron Rodgers. I don't know how much more praise he can get for that. But yeah, I think to your point, we saw Richard Sherman just so comfortable on that one side of the field, and then we had a hardest time replacing a Byron Maxwell for like a year and a half until we got Shaq Griffin. And Shaq Griffin, he solidified his spot, but now we have another hole that we gotta fill.
For example, Brandon, what was his name?
Brandon Browner?
Brandon Browner. He couldn't play anywhere else, right? Deshaun Shedd is not a starting cornerback anywhere else except for people who now run the Seahawks system. You can plug in players who don't have to be awesome and still be not stars, but we can run our defense. What you do need is a really, really, really fast safety. Yeah. It doesn't even have to be Earl Thomas like with the instincts or anything else. It has to be really, really, really fast. So in theory, again, not to be the same level. We're not going to be the same level. We don't have Earl Thomas, of course. What I'm saying is you can plug somebody in there who's really, really fast. Because then at least like in theory, he can cover, he can support when he needs to support, and your other guys are free to do what they're supposed to do in the system. The one year they tried to replace him with, what was his name?
Steven Terrell.
Yeah. Steven Terrell's biggest liability with that was that, well, one, he just wasn't very good. But two, he was really, really slow. So nobody...
But he was supposed to be fast.
But he wasn't. When you watch his game speed was slow as heck. And that was the biggest problem in the end when you went back and watched it, I thought. So nobody could trust that they were going to have the help over top. You couldn't let you couldn't let the strong safety play up front because he had to cover somewhat back as a safety as well. And all of a sudden you got, the whole system falls apart. So I don't that Matt Hasselbeck season, we didn't have an awesome defense, but it was okay. And so I don't think it's going to completely just fall apart. I hope.
I think because it's Pete Carroll and it's his defensive scheme, I do agree that it might be not fall off completely, and there won't be like a huge drop because it's his baby, but it's going to be a big drastic change for I think a lot of the fans because we just don't know what to expect because these aren't the guys that we've been accustomed to seeing for the past 5+ years.
For sure.
Yeah.
I just think like what Pete Carroll and John Schneider do really, really well is they identify the skills you need to play for their style of defense, and you can find those. So you can find the players that, again, aren't amazing on paper or maybe weren't even amazing in college, but they do these 4 things well, and that's 4 of the 5 things we need our whatever linebacker to do or our defensive tackle to do.
Yeah.
So they're able to genuinely find people who are serviceable.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're going to be a 10 on defense. We're going to be a 7.5, 8. But I'll take that for now.
Yeah. Right.
I'll take an 8. Give me an 8.
All right. Let's move on to topic number 3. So this is the Homer Corner. Zeb, is it harder to be a fan now that the Seahawks have already won a Super Bowl?
I think in a sense it is, but I also think in a sense it's a little easier. For the exact same reason. I think it's harder to care as much for me personally, to like get as emotionally invested as I had in the past, because I felt that sort of that satisfaction that thing I'd been waiting for all along, it happened, and that I don't have that lingering anymore. But at the same time, that makes it easier for me because I'm not stressed out, and the losses don't affect me emotionally as much as they did before, and just less invested, I guess. So it kind of works both ways. But I suppose maybe, and this is something I'm actually dealing with. This is something I'm working through. I feel like it makes me a worse fan. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It does.
I don't feel like I have as much. I'm just not as into it as I was before. I've never. I don't know if I probably need to go talk to somebody about this, but I just don't feel like I ever processed. I don't think I processed the championship as well as I should have in that sense that it was always there. It was always a thing that was missing for me, and it's not missing anymore. And like, I don't know, like maybe I need to like cut off a hand or something so that I have something that's missing again.
You've just been on the Seahawks high for the past 5 years, just carried you all the way through.
Maybe that's it.
What about you, Ross? I mean, you've been the fan the longest of the 3 of us. You've been the lows, you've been the highs. What do you think?
I don't think it's harder to be a fan now. I mean, it depends on the type of fan you are. Like, we're all different. For me, a little bit similar to Zeb. Like, after we won the first one, I think I mentioned this last year or 2 years ago. I was actually afraid to confess this, but the second Super Bowl season, like the back-to-back when we got the second year in a row, and I think something happened at the end and we didn't win it or something.
I can't remember. I blacked out.
Yeah, don't remember.
I don't know, but like that season was a little bit weird for me because I went through the motions and I said all the right things and I did all the right things, but I don't think I was into that season. I don't know why. I mean, part of it's like what Zeb said, maybe like once you've won that one, missing it's. I don't know, but I think. For me, it's not that hard because I think I enjoy the process actually more than the actual winning, which is a bit weird because I don't see myself as that type. But I'm actually kind of looking more forward to the season where I think we're not going to be good than I was in that whole like, hey, can we repeat as Super Bowl champs? Well, we've got all this young crew and look at us. I don't know. I like roster turnover and I like the challenge of building up again and the challenge of staying on top and getting the eye of the tiger back, because I sort of felt that was a thing that really, really happened. When the way they lost the Super Bowl, I think it just emotionally scarred the team forever. Yeah. One more thing I think people are going to have a hard time being fans as the same level this coming season, though, with is the character of the team. The last few years, by happenstance or by how things worked out or by the coach's persona, a lot of the Seahawks players really matched the city of Seattle. Not just like, I mean, we're not talking just like the protests and things like that, but just, I mean, it was a quirky, interesting hipster team that was allowed to speak out and not, and And yeah, some of it is the politics, but in other ways. It's just a funky little team. And a lot of those players obviously are no longer going to be with the team. And a lot of like all-time favorites are not going to be with the team. If Michael Bennett and Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas are your favorite Seahawks, not just, now, but of all time, and none of them are there, there can't but help but be somewhat of a layoff, right? Somewhat of a let off in how you feel about the team.
And that's a different kind of hardship. Yeah, that's a different kind of hardship.
But I think we're certainly going to be due for some of that. I mean, like, there's a whole generation of people, and this is like to criticize Seattle fans, all the fair weather fans or blah blah new fans. No, you can't help but when you go to like have the success that they've had, to have more people join in. That's not a bad thing, and I hate people who make it sound like a bad thing. But all this new generation of fan that, and even if they weren't new, but like the first success some of these fans have felt on a super high level was with this crew, and then this crew's not going to be there, and that's going to leave an empty space. Yeah, that something's going to fill, maybe, hopefully.
I think for me personally, it's not harder to be a fan, but kind of like Zeb was saying, it's like, look, I've been to the top with this team as a fan, so I can kind of take a lot more in stride than maybe I would have previously. Maybe part of getting older, different priorities, whatever. But what I think is hard... No, not mature, but I think what it is for a stretch of 2 years, even though, that 2014 year ended in a loss to the Patriots, you still had that NFC Championship game. And that has to be my most cherished game that I've attended in my life, just because it was such an improbable comeback win. JG from the Northwest, thank you for pointing out, because that's a great point. The Seahawks have provided you with all these great wins, and I think we saw that even last year. The win against Houston, the win against Philadelphia, the win against Dallas, like those things are just so crazy to think about, because those were great wins for this team, and yet they still finish at 9-7, and it was a down year. So it's hard, because I think it changes each year. Like expectations, I always want a Super Bowl, but it's not realistic sometimes. I think maybe that's where I'm at, as I'm saying, like, oh hey, we've gotten a Super Bowl, so everything is just gravy now. It's able to take things more in stride and say, okay, now I can kind of accept that we're not a perfect team, and maybe I'm a little bit more honest and say, hey, these are big flaws, and this is probably what's going to hold us back from being a real contender. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. There's going to be huge turnover. There's going to be huge change. But like Ross, what you're saying is like, this is where it could get fun again. This is where we can see like the new things. We're not the Browns. We're not mired in, terrible football. We're going to see like, hey, can this team overcome? Can Russell Wilson be the guy that's going to take his team and make it his team and then lead us to another Super Bowl opportunity? That would be incredible to see, because you always hear, Tom Brady, as much of a pain in the ass as I think he is, there's something to be said. Every time he goes to a Super Bowl, he always says, if I win this one, this would mean so much more. And it's because as you're older, maybe you realize how hard it actually is to get to that point. And I think maybe that's something that we as fans have a hard time, because we've seen so much success over this past, 8-year stretch. It's kind of hard to rationalize that, because this has been more success than we've seen in the previous 30 plus years of the franchise. They're 8-4 in the playoffs over the last 5 years. That's pretty amazing.
It is. I mean, what you brought up with the Tom Brady thing kind of made me revisit question number one. We're talking about retooling and rebuilding. I'm just going to put this hypothesis out there. If this year Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner put this new crew together and we have a lot of success deep in the playoffs, for example, maybe not even Super Bowl, but deep success, is that actually how we define whether we rebuilt or we retooled?
The result?
I mean, post facto, like if it's success, obviously we were retooling. If it sucks, then we're still rebuilding.
I don't know, man. I mean, Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner were in the MVP conversation for 3/4 of the year. So, I mean,
I don't know.
I honestly shouldn't be surprised if they're like the two guys that we build off a successful campaign in 2018. I mean, I don't think any of us should be surprised if that happens. The likelihood, maybe that's what we can question. Right?
I mean, it feels. I mean, again, I'm the one who says we're going to suck next year, and it feels a little negative. At the same time, we do know, at least the Patriots, for example, have transitioned, right? But I'm trying to think of other examples. Are there other examples where like they've sort of had their quarterback and they sort of gone through one wave? I guess the Pittsburgh Steelers as well, right? You have your quarterback, and you kind of go through one wave of players, and then once they almost all go by the wayside eventually. Then you've brought in a second wave, and you've still stayed on top. It's hard to do.
Yeah, it's a rarity.
And, to be honest, and let's put things in context. We've got some feisty teams in the NFC West this year, which I like. I'm not going to just blow them off because they're NFC West rivals or whatever, NFC West competitors. The Rams look legit, and the 49ers might be turning around faster than we thought, and well, the Cardinals are probably fading. But, it's not...
The Cardinals have Sam Bradford as their quarterback. All right, let's be real. The Cardinals are going to be awful.
For at least 4 games. So at least for 4 games they have a quarterback. The Cardinals are they're probably hurt, and they're probably going to have to draft a quarterback. But I mean, we're not rebuilding or retooling whatever in a vacuum either, right? And so, like, while we're trying to get back on top, the Rams have really gone all in on next season. It looks like as well. So.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting. They can't afford to keep their guys even 3 years. So
no, not at all. All right, let's move on.
They've got some good young guys for a core, but yeah.
All right, let's move on to topic number 4. So topic number 4, Ross, you get to start this one off. It's Philadelphia Eagles, Richard Sherman, Michael Bennett, and Kaepernick. Are we seeing a backlash with vocal or political athletes? So this is something that we've talked offline. This is a great topic for us to talk about because 2 of those players are no longer with the team, Richard Sherman and Michael Bennett. They were both vocal in very different ways. The Philadelphia Eagles are the last team to win in this year, and they were ones that were protesting all across the board, not only for social injustices, but other things as well. And Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick has not played in the NFL. The last 2 teams that we know that have reached out to him are the Seattle Seahawks. There's some controversy, depending on who you believe, about why a potential meet and greet was canceled. But Russ, are we seeing a backlash?
Did you just call me Russ?
Ross. Mic drop, sorry.
This is a really, really hard topic, and I think some of what we sort of sensed last year came to fruition. It's hard to put into definite words. I felt last year that there was so much going on around the Seahawks, between Michael Bennett's situation in Vegas and the kneeling and the protest and things like that. I felt like you could even sense that even Pete Carroll and John Schneider actually felt like it's going a bit too far, but at the same time, it's important enough that you have to let it go, even if it impacts football. Because I think they actually got to the point where they thought it's actually going to affect football. And we debated some of that here and online. And we, hey, do you have an hour a week so you can protest? And does that really affect your football life? And da-da-da. But in the end, I don't think there's much doubt that, not necessarily as a political decision, but as a business decision, the Seahawks, for example, are fed up. They're done with it. I think Pete Carroll, he'll never say this. We'll never, ever know. I think he even feels like a little bit of betrayment. He lets the players be exactly who they were. He's one of the only coaches who does. And then, for example, when Richard Sherman leaves, he goes after Pete Carroll, essentially, and down-talks him over and over and again in the media. Even though, by his own theory, like, Pete Carroll did what he should. Richard Sherman talking about like how Pete Carroll's message got old for him and it doesn't work on older players. Well, and then why are you mad that he let you go? You just said that you're the kind of player he doesn't reach anymore. I don't know. I felt that the Seahawks felt a little bit burned by letting their players have as much freedom last year. They didn't have the success they wanted, and they don't know if that was part of it. they felt individually betrayed by some of the players who spoke bad about them, even though they're the ones who gave them the free license to do that. And yeah, I just feel like, I mean, plus there's the political environment of the country to consider as well. I agree. I don't know if it's, I don't know. The NFL certainly seems to have come to some sort of conclusion on it. It's just bad for business. And, you know, I mean, it's, I don't know what else to say on it. I don't have like a nice little tight little conclusion. I think the Seahawks felt burned. And I think they were to a degree burned by it. They went out there, supported the players, let them do what they want, and like some of them on the way out talk like that about them, and then they didn't match their production on the field where you'd think they'd be at. And I don't want to happen, because I think I'm one of those people who believes at the end of the day, the politics of your country does trump everything. That's not an intentional pun.
I was. What about you?
Like,
oh.
You know, no, that's hands off to Zeb.
Zeb, what about you? Where are you in this world of these athletes, the way they interact with the team, and potential backlash?
Well, I mean, I pretty much agree 100% with what Ross said. Like, Pete Carroll is the last coach to tell a player not to express themselves or to, you know, not allow them to speak their mind on issues. He's clearly let it happen and even been supportive of it. But then if you look at the performance on the football field over the last couple of seasons and the decline in the quality of football these guys are playing, whether or not it's related to or a result of the politics, I think it's pretty obvious that Pete and John and whoever else, Paul Allen and Peter McLaughlin or whoever is involved in these conversations, has decided to try to get back to football. Let's focus on football. Let's get rid of these distractions. Let's, just try and leave that stuff out so we can succeed on the football field. I don't think there's any way around it. Like, if you run a Dairy Queen and you allow your employees to express their political opinions to a point where it affects the customers that are coming in or not coming in, you know, that's going to be bad for business, right? So while I do support the players' rights to express themselves, and I appreciate that they do that, I do understand that football is what's important to the organization, because without it, there's nothing else there. So I get it that maybe it's time to step back from the politics somewhat and just recenter and focus back on football.
Or
so
perhaps find a different.
Yeah, I'm split, because I do appreciate and support the protests and that sort of thing. Like, that's something that I've been vocal about. But I also get it if the team is like, look, we need to win football games if we want to keep putting butts in the seats and keep our jobs, right? So,
yeah,
to me, business-wise, it makes a lot of sense to do that.
I look at it this way, that the reason why they moved on from Richard Sherman and Michael Bennett were totally related to production cost and what they were getting out of it. I don't feel that the Seahawks necessarily have any bad will towards Michael Bennett or Richard Sherman and what they did off the field or how vocal they were. I was not surprised at all at the comments that either of them have made. I know a lot of people view those as disparaging comments against Pete, but I think that's part of being vocal, strong opinion men. That's what they're going to say. Richard Sherman to this day still says that he loves Pete Carroll and that he thinks he's a great coach and he loved playing for him. But he said, look, I got tired of the same message because I already knew what he was going to say. I see those as two different things. In the NFL as a whole, I don't think there's as big of a backlash towards the Michael Bennett's and the Richard Shermans of the world because they haven't taken the same level as Colin Kaepernick. We know for a fact that Colin Kaepernick was the most vocal, the most prominent of all of these people that got to the vocal political world. And we're seeing how that's impacted him because, we're talking about a Sam Bradford who has yet to win more than 7 games in a single season, got another huge contract to play for the terrible Arizona Cardinals. There's no Bruce Arians there anymore, so I have no clue who's going to be blowing up purple-faced on the sideline, but I don't expect to be good. But with what we're seeing with the Eagles, we know that, at least I know, there is a way for people to be vocal and political, but still do their jobs effectively. I think that's what we were seeing with Richard Sherman and Michael Bennett. Injuries, production, concerns about their future, that had a bigger impact than where they were in regards to how vocal they were or their political aspirations or how political they were. So I see what you guys are saying. I think what you guys are saying are probably much more in line with a lot of people will view this situation and view the Seahawks and these 2 former Seahawks. But obviously they had no problem going to another team. You know, Michael Bennett probably went to the best team possible in the Philadelphia Eagles. Richard Sherman goes to San Francisco, and if he can return healthy, I fear what that's going to look like. You know, a Doug Baldwin to Russell Wilson connection with Richard Sherman in the way. I don't know what that's going to look like because, you know, Richard Sherman, you know, if he can play at that level, that's not a great matchup for Doug Baldwin in Seattle, so we'll see. But the backlash, I think, is very different from what we're seeing with the Seahawks versus a guy like Colin Kaepernick. It's totally different. I see why people would connect them, but I personally don't see them as being in the same vein.
No offense. I do think you're seeing somewhat how I think you're projecting a bit. I think you don't want the Seahawks to be like that sometimes, and so you're thinking like that. But I mean, the case, for example, for that basically like they didn't bring Colin Kaepernick in because they want him to agree to drop the lawsuit.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
But that
makes a lot.
That hasn't been confirmed.
Makes a lot more sense than right, but it neither has the other side of the story that it's merely like, oh, Colin Kaepernick, we want you to tell us exactly where this is going. I mean that is. I mean because one of them directly affects Paul Allen's investment.
For sure.
If you I mean, like you're asking Paul Allen to sign somebody who could potentially directly like cost him millions of dollars.
But why would you even get to that point though? Why would you even say like, hey, we want you to come in so that you can tell us about your plans to do this? And if he says, I don't have a plan yet.
Because generally, for example, if somebody has a lawsuit against a company that has fired them, if they get rehired, it's almost automatically the suit gets dropped. But Colin Kaepernick apparently hasn't given assurances that he would drop the collusion lawsuit. So that would be the big difference there.
I see what you're saying.
A single thing where Colin Kaepernick said, if I was hired or if I was signed by a team, I'll drop the collusion lawsuit. He could easily say that any time.
He could say that, but I mean, again, like, you know, I haven't heard directly from Colin Kaepernick. I haven't heard directly from the Seahawks, so.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I think people tend to project. I do agree with you, for example, like with the Richard Sherman thing. I don't think that's mostly about politics. I think the Richard Sherman thing I don't think it's about performance either. I think it's Richard Sherman. It's too much of a risk now, given his health and his salary, for all the other stuff he does. And it's not the politics. It's the conduct detrimental to the team. You can't constantly call out your teammates, especially like on the other side of the ball, that you have nothing to do with. Why are you constantly criticizing Darryl Bevell? I mean, like, that's not being a good teammate, flat out. Even if you do feel badly about him, why are you talking to the press about it? I don't, like, come on, man.
Because you're a strongly opinionated guy.
Because that's who he is. But there's also a certain thing called loyalty, right? Pete Carroll has gone to bat over and over and over again for Richard. Richard Sherman has done some dumb things, and he's always, in the last couple of years, has gotten worse about having to have the last word, and he's kind of lost touch with the reality. I've heard him like flat out lie about what happened. I've seen it in the game, seen what he does on the sidelines, then heard his explanation afterwards and going like, that's not actually what happened, Richard. I still love the guy, but he's lost, but every single time he did something like that, Pete Carroll had his back. And so you could say, well, that's just the price you pay for having an outspoken player. That's not being an outspoken player. That's just being selfish. You can be an outspoken person, but still have a sense of loyalty. If you love Pete Carroll, then why don't you have Pete Carroll's back now? You got tired of his stories? Fine. But when you were a young player and he was the only one who was going to take a chance on you and make you a starter, even though you're a fifth-round draft pick, as a rookie, eventually, midway through the season, who else does that for you? And who has your back over and over and over again? You think Bill Belichick's going to go to bat for you? No. Look how he treats his players. But you can't do the same to him? I mean, come on, man. That's not just being outspoken. Like, you have to have a sense of loyalty. That guy helped you, and you don't. As soon as you're out the door, you're going to attack him? Nah.
Yeah, but I mean,
I was really disappointed.
Are you more disappointed by how he reacts, or are you disappointed that he was let go? Because to me, I was more disappointed that he was let go than I was that he ended up talking back.
As soon as I heard he had 2 Achilles surgeries, I wanted him gone. Like, two Achilles surgeries, you're going to come back. I mean, he'll have some success in San Francisco because they're running the Seahawks defense. But
yeah.
He's not going to be the same player. At his age, 2 Achilles. I felt bad in a sense that, like, he last season he seemed, when the Achilles in the right Achilles, when it snapped, in the interview after the game, it seemed like he knew it was kind of destined to happen during the season. He had a bad Achilles all season long, and he's like, but you guys got to go out there and hope for the best. And so I felt like, it's bad. Like, you gave it all for the team, and eventually your Achilles snaps while you're just playing because you need to play, and then you get cut. That kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But again, it's a business. It's bad. I mean, it's one of the bad sides of having a salary cap. The good way more bad, but there are bad things. You can't, player loyalty and team loyalty kind of go out the window more than you want it to.
Yeah, and
I think in long term, like, they could find some sort of solution to that somehow.
And I understand what you're saying, Ross. Is like you want players to be loyal to the coach, not necessarily the team, but respect what a coach has done for you, especially if they're the ones giving you these opportunities that maybe you wouldn't have done in the past. But I also look at, like, loyalty is very, very small and really limited in the NFL, especially if you're not a quarterback. So,
like, money-wise it is, but, you can respect him and not throw him under the bus. There's nothing making you, like, talk bad about your coach. There's nothing making, and there's no benefit to you. It's not like he's making money off of talking about him. He just wants to talk and talk and talk and talk. It really, really rubbed me the wrong way.
Did it rub you the wrong way, Zeb?
I honestly haven't paid much attention to it. Like, I've really not watched, seen, or listened to anything that Sherman or Bennett have done or said since they were released or traded. You know what I mean? So I don't really even know what's going on. I just am not paying attention to it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
they're not Seahawks anymore. So
yeah.
They've been unfollowed. They're not on their Instagrams and their Twitters anymore. Like, that's just how it is for me. Like, they're just, I'll see them leading up to the games when we play against them because it'll be all over the place and that sort of thing. And then once they're no longer on other teams and they're retired or whatever, then I'll be all about hearing what they're doing and that kind of thing. But for now,
question real quick. The NFL schedule is going to get released tomorrow, and we're gonna wrap up here quickly. But the NFL schedule is going to get released tomorrow. If we get a primetime game against San Francisco, do you imagine it's going to be in the beginning of the year or at the end of the year? What will be your prediction?
Both.
You would think that we're going to get a primetime game early in the season and late in the season against the Niners?
I mean, I feel like Richard Sherman versus the Seahawks is going to be one of the biggest headlines, the biggest stories of the season. So I don't even know if I don't think they would do that, like, actually have both of our games be primetime, but they probably will. If they can, they will.
Yeah. Ross, what about you? Do you if you were a schedule maker for the NFL, would you want a Seahawks Niners primetime game? Would you want it early in the year or later in the year?
You got to put it early in the year because threat that one or both those teams could underperform, right? I mean, like, the 49ers came on strong with Garoppolo last year, but he started 5 games, so you don't know. And then Seattle, hopefully they're back, but you don't know. So that's going to be like week 2 Monday Night Football. That's my prediction right now.
I mean, that's pretty likely for sure, yeah.
Week 2 Monday Night Football in Seattle.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're even monitoring Sherman's injury. If he's not going to be available early in the season, then they'll do it later. You know what I mean?
That'd be interesting.
Sure.
That'd be interesting. I think that they probably want to do it early in the year, like you guys are saying. but I think there's also a concern if Richard Sherman's going to be healthy. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did like a late Thursday night game against Seattle, but then it runs into the risk, like you were saying, Ross. What happens if both teams suck and no one cares anyway? You know,
if we knew Sherman was going to be healthy, it would probably be one of the opening night games or something like that.
That'd be interesting. I would likely think it'd be a week 2 thing. A week 2 thing sounds pretty likely. If
week 1 is always huge anyway, and then week 2 you keep it up by having a showdown. I would do that.
The one thing I'll cap off, and I'll let you guys get final words into, is the one thing about the Michael Bennett's and the Richard Shermans of the world is that they get people riled up on one side and the other, just like we're talking about. We come at it very different perspectives, and that's what people talk about leading up to a game. And I don't think that those guys could have gone to a better place for them in how they can still be connected and how they could potentially play against Seattle in the future. So, like you said, they're not Seahawks anymore. I will still follow them because I do like them as players and I do like them as individuals. But I definitely understand the other side where it's saying, like, you know, it's not maybe a burnt bridge, but a light scorching is definitely something that people are not fans of.
Right. I agree. My final thought on Kaepernick, I want to say this about Kaepernick. I hope that somehow the Seahawks and him are able to come to an agreement and he's able to play backup quarterback to Russell Wilson. I hope he does that. I hope he kneels for every national anthem. And I hope that his teammates and his coaches stand behind him while he's doing it. Because I believe in his right to express himself and I believe in his cause. And I think the people, even if you don't believe in his cause, the people that are angry when he does that are the people that are in the wrong, because there's nothing wrong with it. So if that makes you angry, then good, go be angry. Don't watch. I don't care. I don't need you.
Yeah. Ross, final thoughts on our topics here.
I agree with Zeb that, I mean, like I said, in a theoretical way, I mean, I wish the American public could go back, become more idealistic about their politics. And that includes letting Colin Kaepernick kneel and understanding that that's not an attack on you. If you don't like him kneeling, then you should be contributing to a society where he doesn't feel the obligation to kneel. But I also think, like, in today's America, where people care more about their wallet than anything else, the owners, there's 32 owners out there who have paid $1 billion or whatever each to own a team. And if they think that Colin Kaepernick kneeling is going to harm their investment, they also have a right to say, you know what, we're not going to do that. And unfortunately, that's where America's at. And I do blame them for that. But I also understand that they're just part of society. They don't determine society. That's just where the society is gone. Like, and I don't know how to fix that. And that's way beyond the scope of this podcast. So it's going to leave it at that. It's if nothing else, the NFL has become an interesting sort of microcosm of society, though.
Yeah,
sure has.
Interesting note: the Carolina Panthers are for sale, so we should all go check under the couch and see if we can scrounge up some coin together, and maybe we could put a bin in.
We just, you know, if we all just, if everybody from like hawkscast.com puts in like $5, we could probably buy it, right?
Yeah, we're not that
I
far
got
away.
$100 in my PayPal.
We'll just start a GoFundMe. We'll take it from there.
We're halfway there. I'll put $5 in.
All right. So that is our off-season drama episode. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. We didn't get to everything today, but it's year 3. We're excited to be back. We got a lot more shows scheduled. Gentlemen, shout-outs. Zeb.
Go to triplebpodcast.com and then go to zebdak.com also, and shout out to Joe Guns, who had his second daughter, Mesa, just not 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations,
That's my
Joe.
brother, Joe Guns. Shout out to Joe.
Ross?
Congratulations.
Ross, any shout-outs?
No, not today.
Not today? Saving it for later? I hear you.
And we'll be back next week, right?
Yeah, we'll be back. We got 2 more weeks. We're going to be back-to-back. So we're going to show next week, Wednesday, before the draft. So round 1, Seahawks currently have a first-round pick. So that's Thursday. They don't have a second or third-round pick on Friday, but they got a ton of picks on Saturday. So we will be back. Matty Brown's going to be joining us, so that'll be great. Check us out on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast. Check us out on Facebook at Seahawks FanTable. Hawkscast.com, that's their website. We got a great forum. There's a lot of topics there. And gentlemen, we're looking forward to year 3 of the podcast. And thank you for joining us today. And go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Hawks.